a kid and you dreamed of being the absolute best at something, whether you were going to be a doctor, a rock star, or a pro athlete, you had this incredible drive inside of you. I am going to be something amazing. Then years later, you realize that dreams don't just happen on their own. You have to show up every single day, not just when you feel like it. And for myself, I needed a good coach, a mentor. We all need good teammates and partners who believe in us when we don't believe in ourselves. It doesn't matter if you want to win a gold medal or become a better version of yourself, personally or professionally. It takes a real first step. So whatever your dreams or goals, you have to surround yourself with like-minded people who will inspire you, motivate you, and keep you accountable.
Okay, and we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Jamie Saleh, live with Jamie Saleh, Transformation episode number 3. Hello, Jamie Saleh.
Hello, Peter Clark. How are you today?
How are you today? This is fantastic. Listen, I love everything that we are trying to do with this show, specifically what you are trying to do with this show. And we have an amazing guest today, so I'm going to throw it right to you right now. Let's get right to it. Who's coming with us today?
I am super excited about this show today. Our special guest is Robert Paris, president of Myelin Leadership International. Robert is a pioneer in this area of neuro leadership, and he's extremely passionate about helping people, teams, and leaders understand how their brains work so they can lead a more fulfilling life. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you a short video to give you more clarity on the type of work that Robert does. Here it is.
Hi, I'm Robert Paris, president of Myelin Leadership International, and I have a passion for helping people and teams discover their inner truths so that they could lead more fulfilled lives. How do I do that? I teach people how their brains work, because when you think about it, the brain is responsible for everything that we do. Every decision that we make is responsible for our behavior, how we solve problems, etc. And yet we don't understand how our brains work. So by teaching people how their brains work, we help them make connections between past events in their life that could have been traumatic. Once you tell your story and you go back into childhood, you start to understand that there were events in your life that were traumatic as a kid, as an adolescent, or perhaps even as an adult. And what the brain does to help you survive and get over those circumstances is that it develops short-term coping mechanisms, trying to please others, withdrawing from conflict, or maybe even becoming a bully. And unfortunately, those behaviors get hardwired in the brain. That's what drives your behavior without you being aware of it. So by telling your story, the key is, number one, you become aware of your brain. You become aware of what factors in your life are leading you to behave in maladaptive ways. And once you understand that, what we could do is rewire your brain in a fun, non-threatening way that doesn't use psychology. It just gets you to write a self-affirming script that says, hey, I'm really valid, I have old brain wiring, and now I'm over that. And once you do that and repeat that, you rewire your brain, and the results that we're getting are absolutely spectacular. But not only that, when you get every team member in a team doing the same thing, telling his or her story, but in a human, authentic, real way, there is no better way to build trust in the short term and to really get people to collaborate with each other. That's what team building should be about, and we're getting tremendous results in coaching, leadership development, and team building. So I'm looking for individuals, leaders who are bold, courageous, and innovative, and get the fact that the way to a long-term sustainable competitive advantage is to invest in your people. So look forward to potentially working with you.
All right. Welcome, Robert Paris, all the way from Montreal. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I am doing super here. And by the way, thanks for playing that video. I could watch it all day.
It's
It's really,
amazing.
but I really
It's really
appreciate.
incredible.
Yeah, I really appreciate Jamie you having me on your show. Thanks so much.
Are you kidding me? This is so special for me because I do want to share with our listeners though and be really transparent with everybody and tell them that I first met you on Michael Landsberg's Isolation Nation show. And I was incredibly intrigued with what you're doing for people. And then I asked you if I would be able to actually work with you really soon after. Right? It was a great show. And I was like, you're just speaking to me here. I need to do this work.
Well, it was Jamie. And what impressed me about that show was that you and your mom, you were both on. And what impressed me was that you came on and you told your real authentic story. And I think that's the stuff that leadership is all about. I thought that was awesome. And I know we've kept up after. So great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, from doing this kind of work previously, I personally know the impact of working on your inner story and how it has affected me moving towards my dreams. So I might be a little biased, of course, in a good way, but I really wanted to share this work with the listeners as I believe it can really, really be a game changer for all of them. Truly believe that. And I also want to point out, Robert, to everyone that even though your work and your website is focused on working with organizations and leaders for business reasons, that your work is truly about individuals and how people's brains work and how we can all benefit from learning more about neuroscience.
Well, there's no doubt each and every one of us can benefit from better understanding the hidden stories that lie within. I worked with dozens and dozens of individuals in all kinds of organizations, and I could tell you it's life transformative to be able to get in touch with your story and then live it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, this is what this show is all about. Transformation. So we would love to hear from you today how you would describe the concept of transformation and what it really means to you.
Well, yes, and thanks for doing a show on transformation. That's what it's all about, right? All of us really have to, or we have the capability of transforming our lives. And from my perspective, transformation is really about getting in touch with that hidden story. We all have these hidden stories that reside unconsciously in our brain, and yet they impact our behavior, everything that we do. But it's kind of scary because we're not really familiar with what's buried deep within. So transformation is the process of getting in touch with that hidden story, making links between that story and potential negative behaviors that exist in your adult lives, for example, and making the transformative changes. And as I said before, people who go through the process, it's not the easiest thing to do, because it involves evoking emotions, but I could tell you it's one of the most liberating things that any individual can go through.
Mm-hmm. You talk about how it's uncomfortable. You've talked to me in our chats together why it's uncomfortable. Can you share with our listeners why?
Well, it is because actually getting in touch with our story and telling it goes against our evolutionary biology. It takes great strength to be able to get in touch with your story, because the reality is, in telling your story, we encourage people to get in touch with the traumatic events in your life. And so that could result in emotional pain, right? And again, it goes against our biology to feel pain. Our brain really doesn't like doing that. So for us to be able to experience and feel that pain goes against how our brain really works. And furthermore, telling our story, like you and your mom did on Michael's show, also goes against our biology, because that makes us feel vulnerable. And again, we don't like being vulnerable because our brains are all about survival, and emotional pain could be a threat to our survival. So the majority of us shy away from doing that, from living or identifying and telling our stories.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I'm definitely interesting. Maybe I'm a low percentage of the people you've worked with that it has no problem sharing my stuff, my baggage, my my hidden stories. I'm very open about that. And I actually, I think that's what my clients really appreciate the most working with me is that I'm very open and honest and vulnerable with them. So I think it's important.
Well, you're really easy to work with, Jamie, for for that very reason. But I could tell you, there's a number of people who, when they first go through the process, they look at me and you want me to do what, right?
Yeah.
Emotions, and you want me to actually reveal that and then tell it, and they're horrified. But when they go through the process, again, they say it's one of the most meaningful things that they've ever done in their lives.
For sure. Oof. On your Mylan Leadership website, you talk about how your programs are successful because you have this amazing, powerful 5-step process that you take your clients through. For this show, let's take the audience through that process so that you can explain how it relates to them as individuals and how it relates to them for their own transformation. Does that sound good?
That sound. Let's do it. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Okay, so step one, and I want everyone to know I'm going through this too. So I'm so passionate about work. Can you briefly describe how you do that and how can someone even maybe do this for themselves?
Okay, well, let's go step number one, because it's so really important. When you think about it, the brain is responsible for everything that we do, and yet we know very little bit about it. When I'm in workshops and I throw out the question, what's the function of the brain? There'll be hundreds of different answers that helps us communicate, control our impulses, and on and on and on. But in reality, the brain is all about survival. That's the organizing principle of the brain. And we really have to understand that fact, because once we understand that, the fact that we approach reward and we kind of shy away from threats, that's how the brain is organized. So having that knowledge, knowing that our brains are highly emotional, is critically important, because in most organizations, in the world of sports, we tend to shy away from emotions, thinking that that's a sign of weakness, when in fact it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength to be in touch with those emotions, and lead more fulfilling life. So the first step is, once we understand this engine that drives everything that we do, because the brain scans the environment every 1/5 of a second looking for threats behind the scenes. So it's always on, even when we sleep. So doesn't it make a lot of sense if we want to take control of our brains, not let our brains control us. But in understanding the brain, we see that these unconscious thoughts actually drive our behavior. We're not aware of them. So the first step is, let's be aware of how our brain works before we start getting into our storytelling. It's a critical part of this process.
This is so good. Okay, and then we'll go to step 2, which encourages people to tell their actual life stories. The process is supposed to be fun and invigorating, yet these stories will also identify past traumatic events. And as you know, this was powerful for me. I had a lot of emotions around this, some really positive and some dark stuff. So can you please talk to us about why it's important to identify these traumatic events, since many of us are trying to forget them and just move on?
Well, yes, and in fact, emotional suppression is kind of a strategy that's used by a lot of people. But the reality is, you can't suppress your emotion, because the emotional part of the brain is most related to survival, right? And so those emotions and those stories reside in your brain, right? And it actually takes a huge amount of cognitive energy to suppress your emotion, which is why people who are constantly suppressing their emotions are fatigued a lot of the time, because it's your brain working in overdrive. So yes, it's a very difficult thing to do, but the reality is, and I think if you go back to the video at the top of the show, we all, as kids, we were dependent on our parents, right? And the reality is, most parents, unintentionally, they don't exactly have the best parenting techniques. And again, unintentionally, right? They might belittle us. They tell us no a lot. Some of us, two working families, they don't spend time with us. They make us feel really small. But when we're very young, that's a threat to our survival. right? So we develop coping mechanisms to get over that. As we said in the video, it could be getting aggressive or bullying. It could be pleasing others. It could be becoming a perfectionist. There's many ways we go about. The problem is that those hidden stories with the messages saying, I'm a loser, I'm really not going to be successful in life, as well as those coping mechanisms, which could be getting aggressive and bullying other people, become hardwired in the brain unconsciously, but they carry over into our adult lives and lead to negative behaviors.
Yeah.
So the truth of the matter is, step 2, telling your life story. If you really want to achieve your life's destiny and maximize and find out who am I in life, what was I destined to do, it is absolutely essential that you have the strength to get in touch with that inner story. And as I said, once you do that, it's an amazing, liberating process.
Yeah, like I talk about the importance of visioning. And even for myself, I'll use myself as an example. I found myself in the last, even 10 years, let's say, where I would have this great vision of what I want to do, but then this belief would always come back up. So what you're talking about is really important. And actually, when I've done the work to work through all this, I am getting different results and I'm responding very differently. I'm not as reactive and angry and frustrated because for me, this now, I've put walls up, right? I just go into avoidance and I want to push everything away. And so now doing this work has helped me come from love a little bit more and be less reactive.
Yes, Jamie, and as we've talked about, you and I, avoidance is a coping strategy. And unfortunately, right, you can testify to that. But it's not an effective one because it might work in the moment. So if you meet someone with whom you're in conflict with and you avoid and walk away, you might think, oh, well, that's very effective. But as I said before, no, because it resides in your brain and you're going to have that inner resentment or anger or even shame or guilt that's always going to be there, which is why it's necessary that we take control of those hidden stories and our brains. It's fundamentally important.
So good. It's kind of like when we talk about, how people will shove things under the rug, right? It's the same connotation of like really pulling that stuff out of our subconscious mind and talking about it and dealing with it. So good. So step 3, we're asked to see the links between these traumatic events and our current negative behavior. So why are those links important to identify for ourselves?
Great question, and number 3 might be key in terms of the process, because again, we have all those hidden stories based on traumatic events, as I said, primarily in childhood, but also in adolescent years. And when you think of your teen years, there's a ton of pressure, social pressures, academic pressures coming from teachers, friends, all kinds of stuff that could result in those negative messages in your brain. So, and also in adult, we have all these traumatic behaviors. So step number 2, once you're aware of your stories and the traumatic events and the coping mechanisms, it's then to make a link in your adult life in terms of, okay, what's going on? So if my hidden coping mechanism is bullying or being aggressive, you might be the toxic boss in the workplace or the toxic coach. We have all kinds of those, right? And you think that is normal, right? Because you're in your own brain. So treating other people to that, like that, is very, very, very normal. But you're not aware of the fact that you're turning the other person off and others off, and it's resulting in a negative perception of yourself. So once you start to understand, again, how your brain works, what your hidden stories are, and you now understand, why am I a bully? Or why am I trying to please others all the time? Why am I a high achiever, right? And I know, Jamie, you're a very high achiever, which is great. But if all you're doing is achieving, and that's taking you away from building human relationships, then that becomes a negative coping behavior. So that's what we do. We make links between those hidden stories and coping mechanisms. And once you start making links between your negative behavior in adulthood, light bulbs start to go off. You can say, wow, Now I can start to take control of my brain and transform.
So mine is more even the pleasing part that I became more aware of working with you, right? Is the need to always please people, or feeling like I want everyone to like me.
Yes.
Coming from my childhood, right? So just sharing with our listeners the stuff that I've been doing with you is just so powerful, because you know, it's not even that I didn't think I had a traumatic childhood at all, but my behaviors today, you know, before were not always so positive, and it was coming from the things that I've learned as a child. So, I'm so grateful for this work with you, and to be able to share this with everybody, because there are two more steps, or one more step, but I separated them into two that I want to finish this and top it all off, because this is key, super key. So the step 4 talks about writing a script about our defective wiring, which I think is so true, while still affirming the positive aspects of our being, such as our courage, our value, our accomplishments, things like that. So can you explain to our listeners how they do that? Like, do they start a journal or write affirmations? What exactly is the process for this?
Great good question. And of course, it's necessary to go through the 3 steps of the process, ending in making links between your hidden stories and maladaptive behaviors. And then once you're aware, and it's so important that you're aware of that, then what we do is we work with the you know, the person who I'm coaching, basically to write a self-affirming script. Okay. And in writing that self-affirming script, first of all, most of the scripts start off the same, that I am no longer going to let my brain control me, that I am going to start taking control of my brain. And then you write this self-affirming script that essentially says, you know what? I'm really good. I'm positive. I'm successful. In your case, Jamie, look at all your accomplishments. Look at all your achievements. I'm a good person. You're my, you know, my family life, my professional life with friends. I've accomplished a lot, right? So we have everybody write a few paragraphs, right? We finalize that script, okay? And that becomes really, really important, because that's the step to number 5, which we'll get into in a minute. But that's essential, this step, to now start taking control of your brain. So we really encourage everybody to do that. But the second thing that you mentioned as well is journaling. And a very important process is that what we recommend is people, again, get in touch, have the courage to get in touch with the traumatic events in your life, and to spend 20 minutes a day, every day, writing it down. Just write down your thoughts. You're in touch with that trauma. What did you think? How did you feel? We have over 1,000 research studies that says that process alone, okay, just opening up and writing down your story, has enormous mental and health benefits, which is so important to understand. And by the way, you don't have to keep the script. You can just tear it up after, because now by writing down the script, you're sending a message to your brain, I'm in control.
I'm excited for this process. Okay, so then we go to step 5, and we're supposed to repeat this new script every day, at least twice a day, for a minimum of 60 days. So, Robert, tell everybody why repetition is so important. I mean, I know why for even when I was a figure skater, but why it's important for the overall process.
Well, it really is. And of course, the brain is all about habit. That's how we learn something, right? Actually, we talked a little before about the name of my company, Myelin Leadership International. Myelin is actually the brain wiring. It's kind of a gooey substance in the brain that when you repeat something, so when you were learning to skate, you didn't skate that great on day number 1. And over time, over months and years, you got better and better and better, because you're building myelin in your brain to eventually skating to you became habitual. It's the same thing with your scripts. When you repeat your script twice a day, every day, you're going through the same process. You want that script to become habitual, so that when you're in a potential hot button situation, that you're about to go back to your old behavior, after 60 days now, your new brain wiring comes to the forefront, okay, and takes over from the old brain wiring. You're not going to destroy the old brain wiring because it's there for life, for survival reasons. But when you repeat it every day for 60 days, twice a day, now that new brain wiring after 60 days will override the old brain wiring, and you'll act in a way which is much more productive and fulfilling for you. And the thing is, if you miss one of those days, you have to go right back to day one because you interfere with the brain wiring.
Oh,
Just do it every day.
oh, commitment, dedication, accountability, really, really important. But you know, it's like anything that if we want change or transformation, we got to do the work.
Yeah, and I think that's a strong message coming from you, Jamie, because again, in doing what you've done and achieving that what you've done on the ice, I'm sure that commitment was just critical. Like every hour of every day, just going and going and going, and it's the same thing here.
You know, Robert, it's all about a decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
I decided for that. And I also decided to be a coach. And so when you decide when it's not comfortable, you decide when it's not convenient, you decide every day if it's what you love. And I decided that this work for me was really important to take me to that next level, not only for myself, but moving forward in my coaching career.
Yes, and you took control of your life, and that's exactly. We all have a choice. We could choose to take control of our life, or we could choose to let, again, random events in our brain control us. And I think you've decided, I've decided, and so many people I've worked with have decided, I'm going to take control. I'm going to make that commitment, because in the end, you're going to be more in touch with your life's destiny. It results in more, positive mental and physical health. Brings out your passions. It really is, the name of your show. It's transformative.
It's awesome. So let's talk about where we go from here. I mean, 2020 for many of us will be a year of massive change, emotionally, physically, financially, and most certainly mentally. I mean, for everybody. So Robert, what advice can you give to the audience about how they can move forward over the next 6 to 12 months while using these powerful tools and techniques that you've shared with us today?
Well, you're absolutely right. The times in which we live are unprecedented, right? Number one, they're highly uncertain because nobody knows what's happening tomorrow, next month, next year, right? And the brain craves certainty. It actually goes into fight or flight mode or freak out mode when faced with uncertainty, at least for the majority of us, right? So that's why getting in touch again with your feelings, those hidden thoughts, that's why engaging in journaling, maybe even mindfulness, which is kind of a meditation process where it teaches you to be in the moment and not worry about the uncertain future, because the brain is prone to negativity, and we tend to think negative thoughts, particularly when faced with uncertainty. So engaging in the process I talked about, as well as mindfulness and journaling, is critically important. And the other thing to add is many of us are working from home. I mean, to take a look at us, we're Zooming from our home. But for a lot of people, it's not normal to be in social isolation. In fact, the fear is many of us, there'll be mental health problems coming out of all this, right? So we have to learn to cope with that, to get in touch with each other, to stay in touch, to reach out. Now's the time to do it. It's incredibly important and very brain friendly.
You can say that again. I also think this work not only is powerful. I mean, we talk about doing it as an individual, but I would love to see this get into sports. I mean, being an athlete, how incredibly powerful this would have been. Even going through my journey as a figure skater, and then when I transitioned from figure skating into life, I could have benefited massively from this. So I think Peter is the producer today. Him and I have talked a lot about this and how we could take this work that you're doing and get it into the sporting world. What do you think?
Well, I think it's really high time, because so many sports has this kind of, they have this macho kind of climate where to actually even talk about emotion, let alone getting in touch with your emotion, is a sign of weakness. And I'll tell you how we define leadership today. Leadership is showing vulnerability. And to be vulnerable, the only way to do that is to get in touch with your emotion and to be able to tell your story, because that's authenticity. And we follow authentic leaders. We don't follow people who are fake, who make stuff up. We want to follow someone who basically says, hey, this person's human. They've admitted that they've made mistakes. They've admitted stuff they've gone through in their lives that maybe I can relate to as well. Wow, that really inspires me. So from a leadership perspective, for coaches, retired athletes, current athletes as well, I submit this is one of the, probably the most important thing that they could go through.
100%. Robert, I cannot thank you enough for being here today. This is honestly a real gift for all of us to have you on the show today. This work is so transformative. It's a game changer. And I encourage everyone to be really open-minded and invest in yourselves in this kind of work so that you can experience your true potential and discover the incredible power that is inside of you. Robert, you're doing amazing things. I'm honored to be working with you. I'm honored to have you on today. And I just want to say that I love how you say helping one brain at a time. I love that.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And that's how we can transform teams and organizations, one brain at a time. Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will see you soon.
Look forward, and thank you for the amazing work you're doing, Jamie, this transformation. So it's such an important message, and coming from you, I think it's inspiring a lot of people. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I love it. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Got it.
Wow. Oh,
wow.
Gosh. How good was that? I just love his messaging. His messaging is fantastic. I love the bridge between the psychological part, the brain part of actually the functioning part, and then the science behind it, the physical,
yes.
how it works biologically and stuff. I just love how he bridges those things. So
yes.
what a great, and I love this message at the end, by the way, for you. Talking about transformation, it's really important for people sometimes to hear. How we're all just really simply human, and you could have, you can win a gold medal, you can win a world championship, and you still wake up sometimes feeling a little overwhelmed at times and stuff. So I'm going to throw it back to you. There's so much for me to dig in there, but I love the fact that he put it into a process for me. I know I'm going to be walking away with that as a takeaway for me, is that it's all about the process. The other part that I really liked is about the journaling. I've always struggled with that for some reason. I think we all do, but writing down ideas when you physically see it, there's something magical about that. It just takes on a new life. But let's go to you and talk about your ahas from the show today, and maybe some takeaways that you took from this.
Love it. Thank you, Peter. Some incredible takeaways for me. Obviously, doing the work, I know how powerful this work is. And of course, the 5-step process is proven to be successful. So, and I'm living it. But my biggest takeaway is the importance of how that hidden story can really, or our belief system that we created, that emanated from our childhood potentially, and even our adolescence, and how that really, it can be detrimental to us as adults. And I've personally experienced that. And so, the other thing I've really learned too is that we can talk positively over here, and we can still have a happiness and success. But often what happens is, if we don't actually deal with that inner story, it comes back to, and for me, it's haunted me. And so, and again, he talked about the behaviors that we show, being reactive, and they're very detrimental, as I said, to relationships and work and everything in your life. And so until I actually got in touch with my inner story, I was finding myself falling backwards a little too often, and I wasn't really happy about that. And I wanted change so badly. And then once I learned how my brain works, which I think is so incredibly fascinating, and being able to tell that new story to myself and rewire my brain, I feel that I've gained a lot of confidence, and I have really much better problem solving techniques. So those are my takeaways. And I just want to reiterate that I want you all to know how passionate I am about helping people. And I'm super proud to bring these conversations of transformation to you, as the intention is simply just to share stories of others, of struggles, their struggles, and how they've navigated through them. Or even like today's show, to share some powerful tips for creating a more fulfilling life, which we all want and we're all searching for. I truly hope these discussions and conversations give you insight and courage and strength, and even motivate you to move forward in your life. Thank you so much for listening, and please send me any comments or requests to my website, jamiesoleil.com. I look so forward to next time. Have a wonderful day and dream big.